The Crescent Moon Club, in association with Cyclops Entertainment, in conjunction with ABT presents Omnibus Unlimited, a roundtable discussion of provocative subjects which must be addressed. Radiovision for the 21st century. Hello again, everyone. I'm Laurence, Nobile, independent researcher and host of Omnibus Unlimited. Tonight, our topic of discussion is Noah's Ark. With me to address this subject is Tom Murray, psychic healer and medical technician from the Columbus Medical Associates in Boston.
Hi, Larry. I just got off the boat tonight. Glad to be here.
Well, thanks for being here, Tom. Dan Murray, ufologist from Berlin, Massachusetts.
Hello, Larry. How you doing tonight?
Very well, thank you. Brian Nobile, youth specialist from Wilmington, Massachusetts.
Just dropping in for a little bit of fun.
And we're glad you're here. And of course, our own producer of Omnibus Unlimited, John Horrigan, who will be chiming in as need be. And unfortunately, John is not here to give us one of his classic entries. Gentlemen, our topic for tonight is Noah's Ark. Oh, here he is. John, thanks for being here tonight.
Oh, thanks, Larry. I was up on a telephone pole trying to get that last-minute connection.
And we appreciate that. Again, our topic for tonight is Noah's Ark. And gentlemen, Noah's Ark. There is some mythical evidence to Noah's Ark. And at late, there has been some physical evidence of Noah's Ark. Am I right or am I wrong? Dan Murray, why don't you start us off with that?
Well, there's been claimed to be physical evidence of Noah's Ark, pieces of wood and sightings and pictures on Mount Ararat, which coincide with the ancient story of Noah's Ark claiming that it landed on Mount Ararat, which is on the Turkish border. But as far as any more evidence other than that, physically, not yet.
Okay, John, you have some mythical evidence of Noah's Ark, do you not? Somewhere in there in that vast library that you possess.
We'll dip into Phenomena, a book of wonders, by John F. Mitchell in R.M. Rickard. Okay, well, why don't we open it with Dan reading the actual story. Are you going to the Bible for this, Dan?
Okay, Dan, you have a story for us, so...
Yeah, I got a story. It's from Adam and Eve, and not the one in your Bible. This is the one from the Forgotten Books of Eden, which they didn't bother to include in the Bible because it might tell you too much. And I'll start with Adam and Eve, Book 2, chapter... I got to remember my Roman here. 8, section 10. Oh my God, hereafter shall a flood come and overwhelm all creatures and leave out only 8 souls. This is Adam talking on his deathbed, by the way. But, O my son, let those whom it will leave out from among your children at that time take my body with them out of this cave. And when they have taken it with them, let the oldest among them command his children to lay my body in a ship until the flood has been assuaged, and they come out of the ship. Then they shall take my body and lay it in the middle of the earth shortly after they have been saved from the waters of the flood. Now this is a prediction of the flood from Adam, the first known human according to the Bible in Genesis.
Very interesting. So, Noah's Ark what was the purpose of Noah's Ark? Whether there is mythological evidence or whether there is hard evidence, what is the purpose? What was the reason for building an ark? Tom, you have something to add on that?
I'm not sure, Larry. This is not really a field I've had a chance to look into too much, but taking it from let's say, a psychological angle, some people say the Bible is a history lesson, some people say it's a lesson in morality, etc. But there's some articles of faith in building the ark. First concept is the gathering of animals, male and female, the yin and yang, the positive and negative, male and female, the reproductive cycle of the earth. That humankind, earth, the whole cycle of generation is to have matching values. That's what's strong, that's what is weak. And the concept of, I don't think it was really necessary if there was an ark to have every single animal on the ark. It's more a concept of, to me it would be animals that I actually use, animals that are important in my environment, and a conceptual thing of the earth, or the ark, as a mini earth. And Moses and his sons and their wives being the keepers of the earth. Again, the role of man on earth being both a physical being and a spiritual being, and having a connection with God, being caretakers of the earth. We have this great flood. Whether the flood is from alien forces, from the destruction of Atlantic by the misuse of human beings, or whether it's just a local flood in perhaps a subcontinent. But you have a large natural disaster, and it's up to mankind to preserve both mankind and nature in some means of transportation when they land in an area in which they can repopulate and recultivate the land. Also during the story, there's a question of Moses getting drunk and therefore being punished in some way. I forget what God's punishment is. But getting drunk, again, could be a state of mind in which you lose control of your capacities for some reason. And when we lose our capacity, we diminish our psychic or spiritual side. We cannot see God in that sense. So the Godhead punishes us. I think Moses died at an earlier age than was expected or something. I don't recall that story too well. It was Noah. I keep on saying Moses, but it's Noah. Noah and his ark. Yes. Noah, go out and build an ark. Okay. As far as, the Bible's very specific about the size of the arks. The ark also could be an archetypical ark, the ark figure for other arks. There's some speculation that this great flood, which covered many lands, just as there could be more than one Adam, there could be 5 Adams, 5 races of man, there could be 5 arks or 5 fleets. But we can always condense a fleet of ships into one, and a group of people into one family. The Bible is trying to explain, in a sense, the expectations and the future of mankind through the past of mankind. There are prophecies, there are predictions of the future. So the Bible is actually a very condensed story. Yes, the Bible is a big book, but the Bible is a collection of many stories and many writers.
Very, very interesting. Before we go to John Horrigan and have him read us a tale about Noah's Ark, Brian Nobile, youth specialist, just wanted to turn to you. Anything to add on this?
Yeah, well, I think the story of Noah's Ark was possibly more of a exaggerated story than need be. I mean, it's obviously not possible to get every single animal on the earth on the ark. So therefore, I believe he just rounded up what he thought, like Tom said, what he needed, and left. It was also a possible idea that they came from Atlantis. They were predicted that a great flood would come, and Atlantis sank. You know what I mean? And that to them was their world, in essence. So yeah, I do think it happened. You know what I mean? I don't think we've exactly found the real ark, because there's been stories of it up on the mountain that Dan mentioned earlier, and now it's mentioned that it's ripped in two. We still haven't found the thing, but yeah, I think it, from what I've heard, I think it's possible. Yeah, there was an ark. As far as to how the Bible described it being a flood over the entire earth, I don't think that happened. You know what I mean? I think from Noah's point of view, it was a flood of the earth.
Well, let's look at that flood. What would what would be the necessary ingredients meteorologically to create such a vast rain cloud to inundate the Earth or that area of land with precipitation? Is that the asteroid hit? Did the Earth wobble on its axis? Were dinosaurs still roaming the Earth when Noah packed up ship? You can't deny the big flood. Finally, these archaeologists, and I'm not saying ARK because the people that hunt after Noah's Ark are called archaeologists, but with a K and not a CH, they're finding unilaterally around the world that there was a great flood, a huge flood, and it annihilated and washed away anything that was in its path. Everything drowned. So, but I agree with the multiple centers of creation theory, where man sprouted along the equatorial belt. I never thought of the multiple arc theory. And Brian brought up Atlantis. They had to be rescued, right? I'm sure that there was something going down in Greece at that time, or in Italy. But these were people in bearskins. Noah was in a bearskin. They didn't have much. They might have had fire, but they could build an ark. And there are pine and pitch. A huge vessel is laying atop Mount Ararat. I'm looking at pictures now, which does a lot for this radio program.
Yes, John, as you're mentioning the possibility of, say, Atlantis being a prototype for Noah, it's not said where Noah lives and works with his family and so forth in the sense of a particular town, I believe. But Atlantis actually sank in 3 different sections. There were 2 minor sinkings, and then, of course, the great major sinking around 10,000 BC, which ultimately destroyed the main part of the island of Atlantis. And it is believed by Atlanteans, the people that study Atlantis and the theory of Atlantis, that this is the Great Flood. But, of course, there were precursors, too. Dan has mentioned to me that there's a description as he was reading an Adam's story. There's also a description. Adam says, "Bury my body in the center of the earth." This is the center of the earth. China's called the middle country, the center country. So wherever you are, in a sense, that's the center of your earth. And that also gold, frankincense, and myrrh are to be buried with him. His body and that gold, frankincense, and myrrh, incense and myrrh, will be stolen and then later brought back to be given to that who is born as a son of God and so forth. So is Adam talking about Jesus and this roundabout trip. If this is true, Adam is exhibiting psychic energy. He's predicting the future, his own death, his own removal, the removal of his remains of his body, the return of gold, incense, and myrrh. The very gifts given to him in his gravesite are to be given to the Christ several thousand years later. Very interesting. And then the voice of God, is this the voice of God, or is the voice of the oversoul of Noah? We have several levels of consciousness. We have about 7 layers of consciousness. Often that inner voice we hear is not necessarily the voice of God. It could be our own superior spiritual psychic voice speaking to us. And as I said, this local man, Noah, and his family, they could be real people, or they could be archetypical figure of many people that got the spiritual message to prepare for the great flood.
And this kind of dates back to our discussion on the theoretic double. Now, I want to get to a question about Noah's Ark, but first, before we go on to that, and my question is born from what Brian and John were talking about, massive flood, but more importantly, what Brian was talking about, a boat doesn't necessarily have to travel a long distance for it to appear as though there is a massive flood. The entire planet does not have to be inundated with water for it to appear inundated. It could be as small as 100 square miles for someone back in that time. So my first question is, how big was Noah's Ark? I mean, I've heard that it was 40 cubits by 30 cubits by 20 cubits, but how big is a cubit? How big was Noah's Ark?
Larry, standing on the earth, you can see approximately 15 miles in any direction. Get in the middle of the Mississippi River right now, and it would just about look like the whole earth is flooded in a sense. Yes, so you don't necessarily need a huge flooding thing for your own self to feel a sense of everything's flooded.
So actually, Noah's Ark could have been built for what we might term today, through the use of technology and our ability to see the entire planet, something that might be termed as a minor flood.
Worldwide, possibly. But because this story, as John mentioned, fits in so well with many, many cultures, and all the ancient cultures, describe a great flood, and it appears that this flood is about the same time. If this ark, an individual vehicle, was built, it probably would have been built for that great flood, because of the importance of the story in the Bible and the destruction of so many human lives.
Dan, you have something to add?
Yeah, they've also found physical evidence of a great flood throughout the whole planet by tracing limestone levels throughout the entire Earth, and it does match with the story. But I'd just like to get into this one other part, is the theory of a satellite, the meteor or a comet or whatever hitting the Earth, or I've also heard Venus swinging close to the Earth, and as I've said, there's always the possibility that it was a military attack upon Atlantis from another planet. But what I was told when I grew up was that, it rained for 40 days and 40 nights, and that's when it flooded. You had something to say, John?
I just think that in line with those theories that you were expounding, maybe the moon came closer to the Earth.
Yeah, there's a number of possibilities, but from my understanding from years ago, when I was a little boy, was that it rained for 40 days and 40 nights, and everybody drowned.
So there was no tidal wave, or
well, no,
it
that's
just
not
rained
true at all,
for 40
because I'm
days.
looking at the regular Bible here, and I'm looking at Genesis 7:11, and here's what it says. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, on the 17th day of the month, on that day, all the fountains, and he means water bodies by the word fountains, of the great deep burst forth. Right, here's the word right here, burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were opened.
A great
he's talking-
storm, essentially.
No, he's talking an explosion. Burst. What happens when you explode? He's talking the ocean exploding. And then you have 40 days and 40 nights of rain. So there was an explosion, is what happened.
So in that account, a comet could easily have struck the planet, Brian.
Yeah, that sounds very reasonable. You figure a huge explosion, a comet hitting the ocean, and then spreading dust into the atmosphere, causing it to rain for a length, amount of time. I'm just curious as to how many people were aboard the Ark. There must have been like fairly a small amount. You know what I mean? Along with all the animals and stuff. And
Noah and his family, right? I don't know how many. Dan could tell you probably.
Yeah, but I'm just curious as to how that they say that was maybe other cultures did put arks, but exactly how many arks did there have to be to repopulate the world again? As far as we know, everybody drowned. You know what I mean? And now you look at us, maybe 1,000 years later, and now we're looking for overpopulation here.
People are horny.
Yeah, I don't think repopulating the Earth is the problem. It's surviving is the problem. No, I don't believe everybody was killed in the flood at all. Evidence shows that other civilizations managed to survive it. There definitely was a big decrease in the amount of people on the planet, and it definitely was massive destruction wherever. And there definitely was a restart, you might say, of civilization. Now, I just want to get into another theory. I've heard a lot of theories about people trying to say that dinosaurs existed at the same time as man. So sticking with the traditional Bible, let's go over to 8, number 20. All right, now he's talking to Noah after the flood's over. And he says, Then Noah built an altar to the Lord and took of every clean animal and of every clean bird and offered burnt offerings on the altar. That was the traditional way to offer. And when the Lord smelled the pleasing odor, the Lord said in his heart, I will never again curse the ground because of man, for the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I ever again destroy every living creature as I have done. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. So he says right here that he destroyed every living creature. And we're trying to figure out what happened to the dinosaurs. Now we've got two sections of the Bible here, number 7 and 8, 11 and 20 in both of them. One's talking about a massive explosion followed by 40 days of rain. And the other is talking about wiping out the animal life on the planet.
Yes, Tom.
Dan, you're mentioning that in the Bible, in which you're saying it's a very good speculative possibility that one of the destructions of the dinosaurs was the Great Flood. If the Great Flood, and there was Atlantis at this time, according to the psychic Edgar Cayce, who lived in the turn of the century in through around the time of World War II, Edgar Cayce states in one of his psychic trances that dinosaurs lived during the time of man, and that dinosaurs were a severe problem, not so much on Atlantis, but on the island off the coast of what today would be California, the land of Mu. Lemuria is the full name of Mu. And these people were psychic, very spiritually oriented, and that the great preponderance of dinosaurs caused a tremendous amount of human life, and that the people of Atlantis helped the people of Mu to develop flying balloons and gunpowder, in which they dropped gunpowder, or you could almost call it dynamite bombs, to blow these dinosaurs up. And they set up a balloon system, floating balloons, to act as an early warning system for the presence of dinosaurs. And Edgar Cayce also goes on to state that during the time of the flood, many, many animals were killed, including dinosaurs. So whether you look at the psychic realm, or you look at the Bible, or also Ruth Montgomery, the writer and psychic, states the same things as Edgar Cayce. She never met Edgar Cayce. When she started her writings, she wasn't familiar with Edgar Cayce, but you have three sources of information basically stating the same thing.
Very, very interesting. And I'd like to go to John Horrigan now, who will give us a tale.
Yeah, and just throw out a thought here. So he builds the ark, he gets his family, a lot of food. Animals go along peacefully, so they know something's up, that the rain is about to come. Noah doesn't have much trouble hurting these animals. His sons, I guess, help him out. They load up and wait, just as it starts to rain. Water wells up and they're on their way. They're at sea with a male and female partner of every known species of animal. Now, Dan, you pointed that out. I don't hear any plants. So that means every plant that was on the face of the earth or in the area of this great flood, this great inundation, must have drowned. Unless it was some sort of water lily. So that means the vegetation that was known before Noah set sail was obliterated, and Noah got a chance to see the mutations take place in evolution from after it dried up, and they climbed down from Ararat, 13,000 feet, incidentally. They landed 13,000 feet at the top of Ararat. That's where the ark sits. Now, of course, that means nothing nowadays. We know about Atlantis and Lemuria. 13,000 feet could have been 2,000 feet that long ago, or it could have been 30,000.
Yeah, you would change not only animal life would change, because it'd have to readapt, but the plant life would also. So you would have a tremendous change, because you have to figure if radiation was involved, if it wasn't a hit from outer space, from a comet or whatever, because it would definitely spray different material around the planet. So you would have massive changes with a lot of things. But he says here, that the earth remains. Seed time, harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. So maybe this was a steadying of the Earth's atmosphere at the same time. Evidently, it was pretty stable in one direction before. So it's like that the seasons came about, and we go on with life according to the Bible from there. You know, the curious part of this is that he doesn't get into plant life at all, which I used to wonder about. But you have to figure that he's got to feed these animals, and he's got to feed everybody else. So he must have.
Obviously, he took provisions with him, Dan.
Sure, but what happens when you mix different seeds?
This is right. The one species won't eat a certain exactly in lining them up in accordance, because I know that some species fight with each other. Obviously, these animals that went along with him had telepathic powers. Now, here's another thought I want to throw out. They tell us, all of us tonight, that there's going to be a rain. We get a sign from God, and we get a JFK aircraft carrier, throw off all the planes. It's feasible. I mean, we couldn't collect every single species of plant life, and again, they're not talking insects. I don't want to hear about insects. It's as if insects never, except swarms of locusts, existed in the Bibles. But could we fill an aircraft carrier with a male, excuse me, and female species of most animals on this earth and repopulate a new Earth? My answer is yes.
Oh yeah, in fact, the U.S. Navy built a battleship based upon the dimensions in the Bible of the yak, and that's a known fact. The thing floats fine.
Yeah, I have a problem with this thing about the way that the Bible puts it as God at the end, saying that He will never flood the earth again because of what man has done, and it just makes me wonder if, why would God flood the earth and try to rid the earth of evil when God, the mighty omnipotent, would know it's an inefficient way of ridding the earth of evil. You know what I mean? They almost put it like, I was God and I decided to flood the earth and try to get rid of everybody, and then at the end realize, oh, it's my mistake. You know what I mean? I mean, this is only God we're talking about here. You know what I mean? So the way they describe it, I very much believe it was a meteorite, but I hold reservations as to whether it was really God that told him he was going to flood the earth. And I also question whether or not the entire earth was submerged in water. You know what I mean? I don't disagree the fact that, a lot of the earth must have been, if they can prove it, you know what I mean? But as far as all the species of life that we have, and the civilizations that have obviously survived it, you know what I mean? It just doesn't seem possible to me in my mind.
So Brian, sort of what you're saying is that God practices religion like the American Medical Association practices medicine. You have cancer, we're going to nuke it, kill everything there. Whatever survives must be good, and everything else was bad. I kind of agree with what you're saying there, which again goes into interpretations of God and the Bible. For instance, the Bible's God's book. All the authors are writing about God. So there is some speculation that Yahweh was a local mountain psychic of a Jewish tribe, who they decided to take this psychic energy force and build it into being the supreme being of all things in all the universe, and went out and slaughtered their enemies to take over land. That's one interpretation. Another interpretation is that this is the voice of God talking directly to people. My information from my psychic groups and people is that you have 7 levels of awareness. You can't really know the power of all powers. You can know lower levels of those powers, angels and so forth, but you can't really communicate directly with God. Your own limitations of your body's structure, your body's nervous structure and so forth, are too limiting for you to visit God. I mean, you would burn up visiting the sun, and the sun is just a part of this solar system. How much greater is this God being? So is this voice of God not so much the voice of the universal God that we think of, but more a very enlightened spiritual oversoul guide of an entire village or an entire island?
Yeah.
That's a possibility.
The way they make him out is God was a vengeful, destructive being trying to rid the earth of evil, you know what I mean, instead of a forgiving, peaceful being trying to teach its children the right way. You know what I mean? As you always say, mankind is usually at fault for its own destruction. You know what I mean? Now, a meteorite or a giant, comet hitting the Earth, wouldn't exactly pertain to man's fault. You know what I mean? But it doesn't. It appear that God would have anything to do with trying to destroy man. You know what I mean? In the sense of there being it sounds just like a cataclysmic accident. You know what I mean? Something that could possibly happen again. You know what I mean? If we don't learn to defend the Earth of oncoming comets. I mean, look at other planets, Moon, the craters and stuff. You know what I mean? We're lucky that our atmosphere burns up most of the incoming debris, but the possibility's always there, and I don't believe God had anything to do with this at all. You know what I mean? I believe that they had to been psychic, like Nostradamus had been able to predict certain things. You know what I mean? And they could have been able to predict that there could have been a huge accident and prepared for it. You know what I mean?
As we mentioned earlier, Adam is predicting his death. Adam is predicting his body is going to be moved. He's predicting the coming of Christ. There's many examples, I guess, that if we really look at the Bible again, we really look at things, that psychics are found throughout the entire Bible. The other issue I take, being a person from the spiritualist group, is that psychics are the prophets of today. The prophecy did not end with the Bible. Prophecy didn't stop with the old guys of 2,000 years ago. The prophecy is a tool that's usable today and frequently is there and available for you. And that the real story of the Bible and of all of these others is that when man screws up, he pays a price. And man has to become spiritually conscious and aware of his own responsibilities here on earth. Otherwise, he will, nature, God, whatever, will continue to punish him.
And so brings close to our subject on Noah's Ark. If anyone out there has any questions, comments, suggestions, or if you'd like to be a guest on Omnibus Unlimited, you may contact us at Omnibus Unlimited, Box 577, Dover, Massachusetts, 02030-0577. I'd like to thank our guests for appearing here tonight. Tom Murray, psychic healer and medical technician from the Columbus Medical Associates of Boston. Dan Murray, ufologist from Berlin, Massachusetts. Brian Nobile, youth specialist from Wilmington, Massachusetts. And of course our own producer of Omnibus Unlimited, John Horrigan. I'm Laurence Nobile, independent researcher and host of Omnibus Unlimited, saying thank you for your attention, good night, and good luck. Omnibus Unlimited is a production of the Crescent Moon Club.